Karen Whitmore scoffed, her arms crossed tightly as if that could shield her from the weight of Jordan Walker's words. "Cry me a river," she sneered, rolling her eyes so hard they nearly disappeared behind those oversized sunglasses. "The military's a joke anyway. What, you think serving makes you better than me? Newsflash, you're not special. You people always think you're owed something." Jordan's jaw tensed, but he kept his breathing steady. He'd faced worse in combat zones. This was just another battlefield, a different kind of enemy. He turned to walk away, unwilling to let her venom drag him down, but she wasn't done. Karen lunged forward and with a sharp crack, slapped him hard across the face. The sound echoed through the Willow Ridge HOA Community Center parking lot, drawing startled glances from a few onlookers. Jordan didn't flinch. He stood still, his dark eyes boring into hers, steady as stone. For the first time, Karen faltered, breathing heavy as she realized he wasn't going to cower or retaliate. Her lips curled into a sick smile. "That's what I thought," she hissed. But Jordan, calm and unshaken, simply muttered, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Karen's smirk vanished. Panic flickered across her face, but she refused to back down. "Richard!" she screamed, her voice shrill enough to pierce the humid Pine Haven air. "Get over here! He just assaulted me!" From the nearby HOA building, Richard Whitmore stormed out, his bulk moving fast for a man his size. Jordan sighed. He'd seen men like Richard before, all bluster and rage. Karen's tears, fake and forced, streamed down her cheeks as she flung herself into Richard's arms. "He hit me, baby! He hit me!" Richard's face contorted with fury. "You piece of trash," he growled, charging at Jordan like a freight train. Jordan stood his ground. Richard swung wildly, but Jordan moved like water, stepping aside with practiced ease. The punch missed by inches, and Richard stumbled forward, momentarily off balance. "You don't want to do this," Jordan warned, his voice low and calm. But Richard was too far gone, his pride fueled by Karen's lies. He came at Jordan again, fists flying, screaming obscenities. Jordan ducked, sidestepped, then landed a single calculated punch to Richard's ribs. The older man gasped, all the air leaving his lungs as he crumpled to the pavement. Karen shrieked, running toward her husband. "You'll pay for this! Do you know who we are?" Jordan towered over them, his expression unreadable. "Yeah," he said slowly, "you're exactly the kind of people who think the world owes you something. But not today." Phones were out now, neighbors recording every second. Karen's face turned ghost white as she realized what was happening. The narrative she'd crafted was slipping away. Richard wheezed on the asphalt, clutching his side. Karen's eyes darted frantically, seeking a way out, but there wasn't one. For the first time in her privileged life, Karen Whitmore felt real fear. Jordan Walker could feel the heat rising in his neck, the kind of slow burn that came from years of swallowing his pride just to survive. He kept his breathing steady, jaw locked tight. He'd heard insults before, in training, on deployment, on American soil. Words never bothered him because, in places halfway across the world, men hurled more than insults. They hurled bullets, mortars, and grenades. He'd survived it all. But something about this woman, Karen Whitmore, about the way she stood there dripping with entitlement, so utterly confident in her ignorance, made his fingers twitch. And she saw it. That smug, satisfied smile flickered across her face, lighting her up like she'd just won a prize. Like she'd finally found the button that would break him. Jordan didn't move. He wouldn't give her the satisfaction. "I bet you think you're tough, huh?" Karen sneered, taking another step forward. She was close now, close enough for him to see the way her pupils flared, the way her lips curled around every word like venom. "Bet you think you're some kind of hero." She jabbed a manicured finger into his chest, sharp and insistent, once, twice, her touch more offensive than a slap. "Well, let me tell you something. My husband, he's going to teach you a lesson you won't forget when he gets here." Jordan stared at her, unblinking. There it was, the threat, the escalation. She wasn't just trying to win a parking argument anymore. She was pushing for a fight. He could see it in the way her breath came faster, the way her hands trembled with rage. Karen was feeding off her own hate, winding herself up tighter and tighter like a clock ready to snap. He'd seen this before. People like her needed justification for their cruelty, some flimsy excuse to convince themselves they were right, even when they crossed every line. But Jordan wasn't going to make it easy for her. Shifting his weight, Jordan settled into a loose but solid stance, arms relaxed at his sides. His voice, when he spoke, was even, controlled. Let me get this straight. You're mad because I parked in an open spot? Mad because you didn't get it first? And now, instead of finding another like any reasonable person, you're standing here having a tantrum in a parking lot, talking about how people like me are ruining the country? Karen's eyes flared, but Jordan didn't stop. He stepped into her rage, forcing her to hear him. People like me, he repeated, voice low and measured. What does that even mean? Because from where I'm standing, I parked my truck, got out, and minded my own business. You're the one screaming like you're about to stroke out. A flicker of something crossed her face, not hesitation, but irritation at being forced to say the quiet part out loud. Jordan knew the type. They liked their bigotry hidden, cloaked in plausible deniability. They wanted to feel superior without ever being called out. Karen straightened, smoothing down her blouse like she could compose herself. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about, she scoffed. Everywhere you turn, it's getting worse because of people like you. Crime's out of control, cities are falling apart, and it's people like me who are paying the price. Jordan let out a slow, measured breath. His patience was wearing thin. People like me, he said, his voice tightening. You mean a Navy SEAL? A man who's served in more countries than you can name? Who's put his life on the line while you sat in your air-conditioned house complaining about HOA fees? That hit. He saw it, the exact moment the realization dawned. Her mental image of him crumbled. But Karen wasn't done. Not yet. Oh, please, she scoffed, waving him off like he was dirt. You want a medal? Think that makes you better than me? Jordan stared her down. No. It means I don't take freedom for granted. I fought for this country. What have you ever done for it? Karen had no answer. Her breath came heavy now, fists clenched tight. Then she laughed, sharp, bitter. The military is a joke, just a bunch of government pawns playing hero. You're not fighting for freedom, you're fighting for a paycheck. That did it. Jordan had been called names, had endured ignorance, racism, and hate. But this was different. The way she dismissed every sacrifice, every fallen comrade, it was a line even she shouldn't have crossed. Stumbled forward, off balance. Karen Whitmore wasn't prepared for the way Jordan moved. Calm, precise, trained. He didn't grab her. He didn't strike back. He simply sidestepped like he'd done 1,000 times before in places where failing to move fast enough meant death, not embarrassment. Her own momentum carried her 2 steps past him, nearly tripping on the curb. By now, the small crowd that had gathered was no longer just watching. They were filming. Phones were up, lenses trained on the unfolding scene in the Pine Haven Plaza parking lot. It wasn't every day you saw a perfectly manicured woman lose her mind in public, attacking a man twice her size. But to Karen, none of that mattered. In that moment, she saw nothing but red, rage blinding her to the reality around her. She spun back, breathing hard, hands balled into fists. You're dead! Do you hear me? My husband is going to kill you, she screeched, her voice cracking under the weight of her fury. Jordan stayed still, breathing slow and even. His cheeks still burned from the slap, but his body was calm. Years of discipline didn't disappear because of one woman's tantrum. He stared at her, unflinching, his voice a low rumble when he finally answered, Lady, you don't even know what you're inviting on yourself. Before she could respond, the unmistakable sound of tires screeching against pavement filled the air. A massive black Dodge Ram came barreling into the lot, pulling up haphazardly beside them. The door flew open and out came Brad Whitmore, broad-shouldered, red-faced, and already brimming with anger. Karen's eyes lit up. Brad, right here, that piece of trash hit me, she screamed, pointing at Jordan, twisting the story as easily as breathing. Brad didn't hesitate. He charged like a bull, fists clenched, blind rage in his eyes. You son of a bitch, he bellowed, swinging before he was even fully in front of Jordan. But Jordan wasn't just standing there to take it. Not this time. With the precision only a Navy SEAL could possess, Jordan moved. He caught Brad's wrist mid-swing, twisting just enough to redirect the blow harmlessly past his own shoulder. Brad stumbled, thrown off by the sudden loss of momentum. "I don't think you want to do this," Jordan said calmly, his grip like iron. Brad struggled, but there was no breaking free. The onlookers gasped. A few muttered curses. One elderly man nearby shook his head. "Fella's gonna get himself hurt," he murmured to his wife. Karen's face went pale. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Brad was supposed to show up, swing once, and Jordan was supposed to crumple like the villain in her story. But that wasn't what was happening. Jordan released Brad's wrist with a final shove, sending the man stumbling back a good 2 feet. "I'm giving you one chance," Jordan said, his voice cold and quiet. "Take your wife, get back in your truck, and drive away. Because the next time you swing, you won't get your arm back so easy." Brad stood there, chest heaving, red creeping up his neck. He looked at his wife, then back at Jordan. Somewhere deep down, he knew that this wasn't a fight he was going to win. Karen, however, wasn't ready to surrender. "Call the cops," she screeched. "We'll have him arrested for assault." Jordan laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Lady, there are at least 5 cameras filming right now. You laid hands on me. You slapped me first. Your husband swung first. You really think the cops are going to see this your way?" Silence fell. The weight of reality, of consequences Karen had never once considered, settled like a stone. And for the first time, Karen Whitmore didn't have a comeback. Different. There was a weight here, a simmering malice that went beyond some petty parking lot squabble. Jordan Walker stood still, watching Brad Whitmore grip his wife like she was some fragile thing, watching as Lisa sobbed into his chest, putting on a show for the cameras, the crowd, for anyone who might believe she was the victim. But Jordan knew better, so did half the people filming. And yet, he could see it in Brad's eyes, that flash of righteous fury, the kind that came from a man who didn't need facts, who didn't need the truth because he'd already decided who was right and who was wrong. His wife had screamed for help, and that was all Brad needed. Lisa sniffled, pulling back just enough to point a trembling finger toward Jordan. He grabbed me, Brad. He hurt me. He threatened me." Her voice cracked perfectly, rehearsed or maybe just instinctual, the way people like her knew exactly how to twist a story with a single tear. Brad's fist clenched. "You lay your hands on my wife." His voice rumbled low, heavy with the promise of violence. "You think you're gonna walk away from that?" Jordan sighed, his patience thinning. "I never touched her until she swung at me. 3 times. I stopped her, that's all. And it's all on camera," he added, his eyes flicking toward the rows of phones still recording. Brad's jaw worked, but the truth didn't matter now. Not to him. This was about pride, about a man feeling like his woman needed defending, about proving something. Jordan could feel it, the shift, the moment where reason left the conversation. And standing there, watching Brad square his shoulders, Jordan knew this was about to get worse before it got better. Brad dropped like a sack of bricks, collapsing onto the pavement in a heap. For a heartbeat, the entire parking lot went silent. No shouts, no gasps, no movement. Just the sound of Brad Whitmore groaning weakly as he rolled onto his side, clutching his ribs with one arm while the other cradled his jaw. Jordan Walker stood over him, breathing slow and steady, his fists unclenched and his stance relaxed. He didn't gloat. He didn't raise his voice. There was no need. The damage was done and the crowd had seen it all. Cameras were still recording, capturing every second of Brad's humiliation and Lisa's theatrical collapse. Lisa scrambled on her hands and knees, her designer jeans torn at the knee, blood trickling down her leg from where she'd scraped herself against the asphalt. You're going to jail for this," she screamed, pointing a trembling finger up at Jordan. "You just assaulted my husband. Somebody call the police." Jordan's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile, more like disbelief at the audacity. "You want to call the cops?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying just enough edge to cut through the air. "Go ahead. Let's get every single witness out here to tell them how this started. Let's get every recording off every phone. Let's talk about how your husband charged me, how you attacked me first." Lisa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She glanced desperately around, hoping someone would back her up. But the crowd had shifted. People weren't buying her act anymore. They'd seen enough. One woman, older, maybe in her 60s, wearing a sun hat, stepped forward, her phone still raised. "I've got it all right here," she said coolly. "Everything. You laid hands on that man first. And your husband," she glanced at Brad, still wheezing on the ground, "deserved that." Lisa's face crumpled. "This isn't over," she hissed, but her voice lacked the venom it had before. She was cornered now and she knew it. Jordan shook his head, glancing down at Brad one last time. "It's over for you," he said, turning his back on them both. "Next time you think you're better than someone because of the color of their skin, remember today." Without another word, he walked away, shoulders square, head high, leaving the Whitmores in their own mess, surrounded by a crowd that no longer cared about their sob story. But Jordan Walker wasn't about to let them. He pulled out slow at first, rolling past the crowd still frozen in the parking lot. Some stunned, some filming, all silent. His eyes were locked on the SUV, its taillights shrinking fast as it tore through the lot. A few heads turned as he passed, murmurs rippling through the bystanders. But Jordan paid them no mind. His hands were steady on the wheel and his jaw set. There was no rush of adrenaline now, just cold, focused resolve. The Whitmores thought they could run. They thought smashing his car was the last word, their petty coward's victory after failing to break him face to face. But Brad Whitmore had crossed a line. That rock wasn't just about glass or property. It was about disrespect, about thinking a man like Jordan could be broken, his service, his discipline, his very humanity reduced to rubble with a single act of vandalism. The SUV swerved recklessly onto the main road, tires screeching as Brad stomped the gas. Lisa was turned halfway in the seat, still screaming something Jordan couldn't hear. Maybe she was egging him on, maybe she was panicking, but it didn't matter. Brad was a man unraveling fast, and Jordan knew exactly where that kind of blind anger led. Jordan merged onto the road behind them, his truck's engine purring like a predator stalking prey. He didn't gun it. He didn't need to. He knew the area, knew the roads, and he could already see where they'd head, the main highway, trying to outrun what couldn't be outrun. His phone buzzed on the dash, and for a moment he considered answering. Maybe one of the bystanders. Maybe someone already calling it in. But he didn't reach for it. Not yet. His eyes stayed locked on the SUV ahead, watching every swerve, every panicked move. He wasn't going to do something stupid. He wasn't going to let them drag him down into their chaos. But he wasn't letting them vanish either. Not after this. Jordan exhaled slow, his voice a quiet growl to no one but himself. "You're not getting away that easy." And with that, he pressed the gas just enough. The chase wasn't over. "Oh, I can," Jordan Walker replied, his voice calm, almost too calm. "You think because you scream the loudest, you're untouchable? Not today." Lisa Whitmore's lips trembled. She looked down at her trembling hands, the same hands that had clawed at him earlier, the same hands that had pointed with righteous indignation like she was judge, jury, and executioner. Now they were useless, powerless. She stared back at him, realizing for the first time she wasn't the one holding all the cards. "I didn't," she stammered, voice barely a whisper. You can't arrest me. I didn't do anything. Brad, he was the one." Jordan leaned in, his voice lowering just enough for only her to hear. "Lady, I gave you every out. I walked away. I warned you. You and your husband made your choices. Now, you're going to face the consequences." Lisa whimpered, the sound pathetic and small. "Please, you don't understand. We didn't mean, you meant every damn word you said back there." Jordan cut her off, his eyes hard as steel. "And that rock? That wasn't an accident. That was intent. Felony destruction of property. Assault, attempted battery. Hell, I could press charges for damn near every second of today." Her eyes widened. For the first time, the gravity of the situation hit her. This wasn't just some black man she could scream at and walk away from. This was a man who knew exactly what lines they'd crossed and how to make sure they paid for it. "You got two choices," Jordan said, straightening. "You can sit there and wait for the cops. I already got half the parking lot's footage." Or, he paused, letting the weight of it sink in. "You can run, but I promise you I'll find you, and it'll be worse." Lisa shook her head frantically, tears spilling down her cheeks now. "Please, I have kids. I can't." Jordan didn't blink. You should have thought about that before you tried to ruin a man's life over a damn parking spot. The sirens were distant but closing fast now. Someone must have called the cops after the crash. Probably multiple someones. Jordan's jaw tightened, his hands flexing as he turned his gaze toward Brad, still out cold on the pavement, still breathing, but barely. Lisa caught the sound of the sirens too, her face crumpled, her body slumping as the fight finally left her. "Please," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "Please don't let them take me. I swear I didn't mean for this." Jordan stared at her, his face unreadable. Then finally he spoke. "Yeah, well, you should have thought about that when you opened your mouth." The first cruiser screeched into the lot, lights flashing, tires screaming against the asphalt. Jordan took a slow, deliberate step back, raising his hands in plain sight. Lisa curled in on herself, sobbing hysterically as two officers bolted from the car. They took in the scene fast. Brad unconscious, the totaled SUV, the shattered glass, and then their eyes landed on Jordan. "Sir, step away," one ordered, hand hovering near his weapon. Jordan nodded once. "Not a problem, officer. I'm the one who called." Lisa's head snapped up in horror. You called?" Jordan gave her a cold smile. "Yeah, and I'm pressing charges." The officer's radio crackled, backup already on the way. And as they approached, it was clear. Brad and Lisa Whitmore weren't going to talk their way out of this one. The crowd gasped, audible, sharp, and horrified. Someone cursed under their breath. Others instinctively took a step back, as if the ugliness of Lisa Whitmore's words were something contagious, something vile that might stick to their skin if they stood too close. The officer holding her flinched, his jaw tightening as her words echoed off the concrete and metal around them. Even he hadn't expected that level of venom. Jalen Bennett didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his face unreadable, his breathing even. But inside was a storm. Not of rage, he'd burned through that already, but of cold, righteous clarity. This was who she truly was. Stripped of her privilege, her crocodile tears, her manipulative theatrics, this was Lisa Whitmore's soul laid bare. And now the world saw it. The store manager let out a sharp breath. "You heard that, right?" he muttered, glancing toward the second officer. "It's on my cameras, all of it." The officer who had nearly cuffed Jalen just moments ago gave a stiff nod, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. Yeah, we heard." His eyes flicked toward Jalen, shame flickering there for the briefest moment. "Sir, we're going to need your statement, but—" He cleared his throat. "You have my word. She won't walk away from this." Lisa's face contorted, foam practically forming at the corners of her mouth. "You think this ends here?" she spat, her body jerking violently against the cuffs. "My husband has powerful friends. We know people. You'll pay for this. You'll all pay." Jalen exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing. "Yeah," he murmured. "I've heard that before. Funny thing about powerful friends, they're real quiet when you're in cuffs." The other officer finally lost his patience. "Enough," he barked, jerking Lisa back as she tried lunging again. "You're done, lady. Every single word you just screamed, it's on tape. You're not getting out of this. Not this time." Lisa's head snapped toward the crowd as if searching for a savior. But there were none. No sympathetic faces. No one rushing to defend her. Only disgust, judgment, and the cold hard lens of half a dozen cell phones still recording every second. Brad, now awake but barely coherent, groaned from where he still lay, sprawled on the pavement. Blood trickled from his swollen lip, his eyes glassy. He looked up at his wife, at the scene unfolding, but he was too weak, too broken to say a word. He had started this fight, but Lisa had just finished it, in the worst way possible. Jalen turned away, done with her. "I'll be filing my report," he told the nearest officer, "and I'll press every charge I can. This," he gestured to his shattered windshield, to his bruised ribs, "this doesn't just go away because she's crying now." The officer nodded grimly. "You have every right, sir." Lisa shrieked again, but it was hollow now, empty, a sound no one cared to listen to. The officers began hauling her toward the squad car, her protest growing weaker with every step. You can't do this. You can't." Jalen didn't bother looking back. He didn't need to. Justice was already in motion. The sirens, the flashing lights, the weight of her own words captured forever. It was all over. As he stood there, the wind brushing past, the crowd slowly dispersing, the store manager gave him a small, respectful nod. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "you handled that better than most would have. Hell, better than I would have." Jalen smiled faintly. "That's what they trained me for." He turned his eyes toward the road where the squad car disappeared with Lisa Whitmore inside, screaming into the void. "Some fights, you win by standing tall. Estate, reputation, future, gone in the blink of an eye." Jalen leaned back in his chair, a small, satisfied smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He hadn't needed to throw another punch, raise his voice, or threaten anyone. The truth, the video, and Lisa Whitmore's own actions had done all the work for him. His phone buzzed again. Another message from his lawyer. "Brad Whitmore's company is meeting tomorrow. Rumor is they're letting him go too. The board doesn't want the PR nightmare." Jalen huffed a quiet laugh. It figured. The world was watching. No company in their right mind wanted to be associated with the kind of hateful, reckless stupidity Lisa and Brad had displayed. Not when everything was captured in 4K, circulating faster than wildfire, with hashtags trending by the hour. Parking lot, Karen, hashtag racist rage, hash Navy SEAL wins. They were everywhere. The local news had already picked it up. Jalen swiped through articles, some sensational, others carefully worded, but all of them told the same story. Entitled couple attacks a black veteran, loses everything. Public opinion wasn't split either. Nearly everyone was on his side. Even those who usually stayed quiet about race and privilege were chiming in, calling it exactly what it was. A brutal example of arrogance, ignorance, and racism colliding headfirst with reality. The city mayor had even released a brief statement praising the bystanders for recording the incident and ensuring justice was served. Jalen's name was being floated around as a symbol of calm strength, of dignity under pressure. A veteran who had served his country, now standing tall against the kind of hate still festering in quiet corners of America. Jalen wasn't interested in fame, but there was a certain satisfaction in knowing Lisa and Brad Whitmore couldn't hide anymore. Not behind their money, not behind their community connections, not behind their lies. He finished his coffee, setting the cup down with a soft clink. The sun was starting to rise now, streaks of gold cutting across the skyline. A new day, clean and untainted by the mess of the one before. Jalen stood slowly, stretching his shoulders, feeling the satisfying ache of muscles that had been coiled tight all night. His phone buzzed once more, this time a message from one of the officers who'd been at the scene. "Just wanted to say, I reviewed the footage again. You handled it better than most of us would have. Respect." Jalen smiled, tapping out a simple response. "Appreciate it. Justice handled. That's what matters." There was still paperwork to file, statements to finish, insurance claims to submit. But none of that weighed on him, because the real work was done. Lisa and Brad's faces would haunt the internet forever. Their names now shorthand for everything wrong with entitlement and racism. And Jalen? He walked away not just intact, but victorious. He glanced down at his phone one last time. The viral video paused on Lisa's screeching face mid-rant, her mouth wide, eyes wild, hatred radiating from every pore. He shook his head, smirking. "Hope it was worth it," he muttered. Outside, the city was waking up, unaware that just the night before, a woman who thought she was untouchable had been brought to her knees by her own hate, and a man who refused to let it break him. The parking spot, the fight, the trial, it was all behind him now. Jordan Walker turned away from the Whitmore house because finally they weren't his problem anymore. The cool Pine Haven air hit his skin as he stepped outside, clean and crisp, free of the weight he'd carried for weeks. He pulled out his phone, another notification flashing across the screen, a deposit confirmation from his lawyer. The settlement was in. Karen and Brad Whitmore's accounts had been drained, the first payment transferred directly to him. Jordan let out a slow, satisfied breath and smirked. This was justice, and every bit of it he had earned. Adjusting the sleeve of his jacket, Jordan headed toward the dealership lot, his new keys gleaming in his hand. The moment felt right, earned. There it sat, sleek, flawless, reflecting the overhead lights like a mirror. A deep obsidian black, smooth as glass, not a single scratch or blemish. No cracks, no shattered windshield, no rock thrown out of spite. Just clean, untouched victory. Jordan ran his fingers along the hood of the brand new truck, letting the feeling of the polished surface ground him in the moment. All of it paid for by the Whitmore's arrogance, their hate. He didn't need their money, but there was something poetic about driving away in a vehicle they'd unwittingly bought him. Sliding into the driver's seat, he inhaled the scent of new leather, adjusting the mirrors until his calm reflection stared back. The engine purred to life, a deep, steady hum promising freedom. For a moment, Jordan simply sat there, fingers resting lightly on the wheel, letting the satisfaction settle deep in his chest. Then, with one last glance at the dealership lights, he pulled out, smooth, controlled, unstoppable. He wasn't rushing. He had nowhere to be, but there was one last stop he wanted to make. The drive through Pine Haven was easy, the city lights blurring past, the world moving around him while he remained steady. The Whitmores had thought they could destroy him, but he was still here, stronger, freer, untouchable. As he turned down a familiar suburban street, Jordan spotted the Whitmores' house instantly. Once pristine, it now looked hollow. The pride that used to pour from every corner had dried up, leaving only the shell of what once was. The grass, once perfectly trimmed, was patchy and brown. Weeds crept along the edges like nature itself was reclaiming what the Whitmores could no longer maintain. Jordan killed the engine and listened. The shouting came first. Raw, bitter, broken. "I told you to shut up," Brad's voice roared, thick with frustration and regret. "You just couldn't keep your damn mouth shut, could you, Karen? Had to run your mouth, had to push it. And now look at us. Look at us. What the hell are we supposed to do now?" Karen's response was shrill, desperate, barely coherent through her sobs. "Oh, so now it's my fault. I didn't throw the rock, Brad. You did that. You're the one who got knocked out like a fool on camera. Don't you dare put this on me." Jordan leaned back, resting his arm against the window, lips curling into a quiet smile. He had expected this. Of course they were turning on each other. People like the Whitmores always did once the world stopped shielding them. The shouting grew louder, a slam, something breaking. "Don't start with me," Brad snapped, his voice cracking. "I lost everything, my job, my reputation. Do you know what people are calling us now?" Karen's scream was ragged. "You think I don't know? I can't even go to the damn grocery store, Brad. Everyone stares, everyone knows." Then came Brad's bitter, exhausted laugh. "That's because you are a monster," he muttered. Jordan shook his head, fingers drumming lightly against the door. He didn't feel anger, just a cold, clean sense of closure. They were never going to recover from this. Not in a year, not in 5. Never. With a final glance at the decaying house, Jordan pressed the gas and pulled away. The road stretched ahead, wide and open. He didn't look back. There was no need. The Whitmores were already buried in the ruins they created. And he was free. This story is a powerful reminder that entitlement, hatred, and bigotry always come with a price. And sometimes that price is everything you once took for granted. Karen and Brad Whitmore lived their lives believing the world would always bend to their will, that their status, their skin color, and their connections would shield them from consequences. But life doesn't work that way anymore. The world is watching, cameras are everywhere, and people are no longer afraid to call out injustice when they see it. What started as a petty argument over a parking spot spiraled into the complete unraveling of 2 lives because neither of them knew when to stop, when to walk away, or when to take responsibility for their actions. They allowed their anger and prejudice to define them, and in doing so, they lost their jobs, their reputations, and any shred of respect they had left. The lesson here is simple but often forgotten. Your actions matter. How you treat people, especially when you think no one is watching, matters. Entitlement doesn't make you powerful, and hate doesn't make you superior. All it takes is one moment, one decision driven by ignorance or arrogance to destroy everything you've built. Accountability is no longer optional in this world, and sometimes justice doesn't come in the form of revenge. It comes in the form of public exposure, of the truth being laid bare for everyone to see. Jordan Walker didn't have to scream, didn't have to fight dirty. He let the truth speak for itself. And that's the real power in this story. Knowing your worth, standing your ground, and understanding that real strength is quiet, patient, and unshakable. The world saw who the Whitmores really were, and in the end, they destroyed themselves. If you found this story powerful or if it made you think, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in this situation? Have you ever witnessed entitlement like this? And if you enjoy stories where justice is served and karma hits hard, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. There are plenty more real, intense stories like this coming your way. Hit that notification bell so you'll be the first to know when the next story drops. Thank you for watching. Your support helps us keep sharing stories that matter.